While spell swap is a well-used glitch in Dark Souls Remastered, there are many more nuances to it than I even expected. Fundamentally, it is a glitch that allows you to cast a spell, whether that be a sorcery, miracle, or pyromancy, that you normally would not be able to. This could be due to stat requirements, incorrect tooling, or even just being out of casts. Digging deeper, however, there are many interesting implications on how the game chooses what magic adjust to use in different scenarios. But before getting to those details, let's step back a bit and take a look at two overarching methods of performing spell swap and how to do them. The first method is fairly versatile and can be used anywhere. All it requires is to have two spell tools, a spell that can be cast with one of them, and another spell that you wish to swap to. It's also easiest to do with a male character, but can also be done easily enough with a female character if you start from a non-neutral animation. The timing can be a bit difficult, but all you need to do is attempt to cast a spell you have the requirements for while toggling the spell slot, and then immediately attempt to cast a spell you wish to swap to with the other spell tool. The easiest way I find to organize this is to have the spell tool for the spell you can cast in the left hand and the other in the right. On a controller at least, this has the inputs to cast with the left hand and to toggle spell slots close together, so it's easy to press them at the same time, followed quickly by the input to cast with the right hand. If you get the cast from the left hand, it likely means that you cast the right hand too quickly and it did not register. If you instead get the head scratch animation, it likely means that you toggled the spell slot too quickly. Trying again is fairly easy and just requires attempting the inputs again after verifying the spell you can cast is selected first. You may also want to let any animations finish before trying again, as some parts of animations will continue to block the inputs you want and can easily lead to repeated failures. Once you get a feel for it, you may be able to identify which parts of the animation matter instead of waiting the entire cycle. While this is what's most comfortable to me, you can actually move things around and cast in a slightly different order. You could have the spell tools swapped around and cast the right hand followed by the left hand, but for me, those button inputs don't feel as natural. Moving on to the second method, we have the setup that involves using a ledge and is commonly used to force buff unbuffable weapons. It requires a single spell tool with something you can cast with it, a spell that you wish to swap to, and of course a suitable ledge. Perhaps it is because I know its timing best, but an easy ledge to attempt this with is the one near the Ulusil Township bonfire. Any ledge, however, between shoulder and full height of the character, appears to work fairly well. Once at a ledge of your choice, with your spell tool in the left hand, attempt to cast a spell you wouldn't normally be able to cast, and quickly cycle spells and weapon while holding movement so that you'll walk off the ledge. This first step has plenty of leniency in timing, but the next one does not. The moment you hit the ground, you then want to start the cast for the spell you can use, which should already be selected. If you get the animation of the second spell, but the effect of the first, congratulations, you've done the spell swap. If not, it's easy enough to continue the process and try again. Just make sure to swap back to the spell you desire before the next attempt. From there, you can continue to cast left hand, toggle spell and weapon slot, walk off ledge, and cast left hand once again. If you don't get any spell cast when falling, you likely were too early, and if you get the second spell, you were too late. With the tight timings of the glitch, it may take quite a few attempts, but sooner or later, you will get the spell swap. Note that while doing this with a single spell tool is the most logical way to approach this method, you can actually mix things around quite a bit. You can use multiple spell tools, vary which hand casts first or second, and even change which hand you toggle. The important thing is that you first fail to cast a spell, toggle, fall, and finally attempt to cast a spell you would normally be able to cast. As we'll see, there are many oddities to how spells scale with Magic Adjust, depending on which spells and tools are used for spell swap. But first, let's take a look at the stats for a few different spell tools both at Soul Level 1 and Max Level to better frame some of these interactions. Pyromancy flames, of course, only depend on upgrade level, and so the base flame will always have a magic adjust of 100 and a fully upgraded flame 230. Without having the proper stats for them, the talismans and the tin crystallization catalysts only have 19 magic adjusts at Soul Level 1, but the sorcerer's catalyst can be used normally and will have a magic adjust of 109. Of course, at max level, all spell tools can be used, and so we get 200 magic adjusts for the talisman, 240 for the Dark Moon Talisman and Sorcerer's Catalyst, as well as 315 for the Tin Crystallization Catalyst. Notable here is that the fully upgraded flame has nearly the same magic adjust at Soul Level 1 as most of the best spell tools at max level. Only the Tin Crystallization Catalyst is much higher, with far and away the highest magic adjust in the game. So how do these magic adjusts interact with spell swapping? The first category we'll look at is what I'll call utility spells. These are any spells where the magic adjust stat doesn't matter since the spell doesn't scale, such as casting Fall Control, Homeward, or even Power Within. Since scaling doesn't matter at all, it also doesn't really matter what you use to swap with. It's fairly easy to get multiple spell tools early on, either from a starting class, purchasing talismans from Petrus and Firelink, or purchasing catalysts from Rickert and Newlando Ruins. The second category of spells are healing spells, which recover some amount of health that scales with Magic Adjust. Early on, you can get healed either by starting as Cleric, or purchasing it and Great Heal Excerpt from Petrus and Firelink. With these, the interaction with Magic Adjust is fairly straightforward, though sadly not as exploitable as some other interactions. Taking Great Heal Excerpt as an example, this miracle restores 8 times the Magic Adjust stat used, which in this case will depend on the spell tool that isn't directly casting the heal. If you cast left hand then right hand as I prefer, this means the Magic Adjust stat depends on the left hand tool. If it is a talisman of any kind, the spell will use its Magic Adjust. Otherwise, if it's a Pyromancy Flame or a Catalyst, it will use a default Magic Adjust of 100. Oddly, this means that if you don't have the stats to use any talisman, it's better to use a Catalyst or a Flame, even if you don't have the proper stats for them either. While duping Humanities is likely easier than any of these options, it is interesting to note that this effectively gives unlimited healing. Perhaps this is more useful for AoE heals, like with the Miracle Replenishment. The second to last category of spells are attacking spells, which scale damage with Magic Adjust. This is where determining the value used gets a bit more complicated, but can also result in higher damages not achievable without spell swap. It actually depends on which tool is cast for which spell, but I'll continue to assume casting left hand then right hand to make describing the interactions easier. Here the value used depends on whether the attack is a sorcery, miracle, or pyromancy, as well as whether the left hand tool is a catalyst, talisman, or a flame. When attempting to attack with a sorcery like Soul Arrow, or a pyromancy like Fireball, you get the Magic Adjust of the left hand tool, except for when it's a talisman. In that case, the Magic Adjust of the right hand is used. When attacking with a miracle like Emit Force, you instead get the Magic Adjust of the right hand tool, except for when the left hand tool is a talisman. If it is, you get the Magic Adjust of that talisman. As an example, here are some of the damage numbers for casting Emit Force against a random holo at max level. The max damage on this particular holo without spell swap is 518 with the Dark Moon Talisman. However, with spell swap, you can get up to 680 damage. Maybe even more impressive, this means you can get 496 damage even with no stat investment whatsoever if you use a fully upgraded Pyromancy Flame. Last but not least, we have the category of weapon buffs, which add damage to your weapon that scales with the Magic Adjust stat used. While this is the one time that the ledge method may actually be more useful, we'll first look at the dual spell tool method. Same as before, what really matters is which tool is used for which spell, but I'll continue to reference left hand and right hand. These interactions may be even more complicated, but thankfully can still be distilled into some easy enough rules. Starting with some basics, all weapon buff spells add a flat damage bonus that is equal to the product of Magic Adjust and a set multiplier for each spell. For the miracle buffs, Sunlight Blade and Dark Moon Blade, that multiplier is 1.8, except Dark Moon Blade can increase up to 2.1 by leveling up the Covenant. For the sorcery buffs, the multiplier is 0.8 for Magic Weapon, 1.1 for Great Magic Weapon, and 1.4 for Crystal Magic Weapon. The Magic Adjust used during spell swap for miracle buffs depends if the left-hand spell tool is a talisman or not. If it is, the buff uses its Magic Adjust. Otherwise, it uses a constant 100 Magic Adjust. Interestingly, this means that with no stat investment, a non-talisman will outperform a talisman even if you don't have the stats to use it. It will even buff more than Gold Pine Resin with either 180 damage for Sunlight Blade or 210 damage for Dark Moon Blade. Things get a bit more interesting when it comes to sorcery buffs. Again, the Magic Adjust depends on if the left-hand spell tool is a talisman. However, if it is, the buff uses a constant 100 Magic Adjust, and if it is not, it uses the Magic Adjust of the left-hand spell tool. This means that unlike with miracle buffs, you can actually get unintended scaling with the upgrade level of a Pyroflame. Unfortunately, sorceries already have the best scaling tool with the Tin Crystallization Catalyst, so you can't get normally unattainable levels of damage increase. While buffing one spell tool with another is interesting in its own way, usually you'd prefer to be able to use an actual weapon. This is where the ledge method gets to shine, as you only need one spell tool and can buff any weapon, even if it's ordinarily unbuffable. The process is the same as earlier, just paying attention to start with the right hand not toggled to the weapon, else you'll end up buffing your secondary weapon, even if it's just your fist. As for the amount of the buff, it'll continue to follow the same rules as they only depend on the left-hand spell tool. While there are a lot of intricacies on how Magic Adjust works, the fundamentals remain the same throughout. Whether you use the dual spell tool method or the ledge method, the spell swap glitch allows you to perform spells you ordinarily wouldn't be able to, opening up the possibilities for just about anything.